Every street in Ojulegba had its noise. The roar of danfos, the slap of slippers against hot pavement, the hiss of frying oil. But on Adigun Street, just before the bend that led to the market, there was a silence that came with 1 p.m., the lunch hour. That silence had a name, Laraba. Men lined up for her food before the sun even peaked. Tailors paused their sewing. Bus conductors abandoned their horns. Married men timed their brakes to match hers. Some carried plastic containers, others brought nothing but hunger. All of them came willingly. Some even guiltily. It was the stew, they said. No matter how often you ate it, it never lost its fire. Smoky, peppery, with a depth that tasted like something remembered from another life. The rice too, soft but not mushy. Fluffy, each grain holding its shape like it knew it was being watched. Even the ponmo, soft, perfectly seasoned, soaked through. A single bite and people closed their eyes. "She dey put jazz for the food," one of the pepper sellers whispered once. Nobody argued. Because maybe she did. There was a man named Felix who used to come every day, still wearing his office ID card. He had a wife at home, a fair woman with a wide smile and steady hands. Yet every evening, he returned home full, too full to eat her own cooking. One day, she followed him and stood across the street, watching him spoon the stew into his mouth with the hunger of a starving man. The next day, she packed her bags. Felix didn't notice until 2 days later. Laraba never apologized. She didn't smile much, either. She just stood behind her pots, her scarf always tied the same way, tight at the back, no loose ends. Her hands moved fast. Ladle, plate, handkerchief to dab her brow. Her eyes rarely met yours. But once, a little boy said her eyes looked like she could see through your stomach, straight into your secrets. Nobody knew where she lived. She arrived early. She left after the last plastic chair was stacked. The buka itself was nothing special: wooden benches, plastic tables stained with old oil, a faded calendar from 2020 still hanging by one rusty nail. But the food, it made people stay. And then come back. And come back again. Some people said they dreamed of it. Woke up in sweat, tongue dry, wishing they had bought an extra plate. No one questioned it. Not when food this good came with no menu. You asked what she had. She told you. You ate. And if you were lucky, she gave you more meat. Laraba served quickly. 1 ladle of jollof. 2, if she liked your face. A thick, slow scoop of stew with meat that practically fell apart between fingers. Her hands never fumbled. She rarely spoke more than, "How much?" and "Sit down." Still, people obeyed her in a way they didn't even realize, like they didn't want to offend her, or the food. It was a Friday when the stranger came. He didn't look like most of the men who ate there. No ID card swinging from his neck, no laughter with the other regulars. He wore a buttoned-up shirt, sleeves rolled precisely, and he ordered like someone used to menus. "Just rice," he said. "No meat." Laraba blinked once. Then served. He sat, watched the others, construction workers, tailors, a teacher from the school nearby, and then took his first bite. His lips parted. He chewed slowly, brows knitting, not with confusion but something like disbelief. He took another spoonful. Then another. Then, he stopped. From his pocket, he pulled a small notepad and scribbled something down, almost unconsciously. Then he resumed eating. When he left, he looked at Laraba too long. Not in admiration. More like awe or fear. Laraba stood behind her pot like always, spooning stew, tying her scarf tighter. The regulars kept coming. The queue didn't shorten. In fact, it grew. One woman claimed her arthritis had vanished after a plate of egusi. A boy who stammered at school was suddenly answering questions without blinking. People joked it was JuJu. But no one was laughing hard enough to stop eating. There was a sweetness to the food now, underneath the spice, under the smoke. It clung to the teeth, lingered in the throat. Some described it as earthy. Others, like something deep. It started with dreams. At first, they were simple. A return to the buka. Steam rising off fresh jollof, the heat of pepper in the back of the throat. People dreamed of chewing ponmo with their fingers, of stew clinging to soft rice, of licking their plates clean. That kind of dream didn't scare anybody. If anything, it made them crave more. But then came the second kind that I and those ones, the buka looked the same but felt wrong. Empty chairs moved by themselves. A single bowl waited on the table, already filled. The meat was always too red. Too wet. And Laraba, she never spoke. She only stood behind the pot, stirring and staring, as if she'd been waiting for whoever dreamed her. Felix, yes, Felix, the office worker whose wife had left, was the first to speak about it. He looked different now. Pale under the eyes. Thinner. His belt needed an extra notch. But he still came every afternoon, fingers trembling slightly as he passed his money over. She calls me, he said one day to no one in particular. Every night. Same dream. Same food. I eat, and I wake up sweating. No one responded. Some looked away. Others tightened their grip on their plates. But one man, the stranger in the buttoned shirt, jotted something in his notebook. His name was Alisa. Or that's what he told the fruit seller. He said he was a food safety inspector, visiting local kitchens. But he never asked Laraba for a health permit. Never tested the water, never measured a thing. He just came, sat, watched, and wrote. Once, he tried to follow her after closing. She disappeared before the bend in the road. Gone, as if the street had swallowed her whole. By then, more people were whispering. A neighbor swore his brother hadn't touched his wife in 2 weeks, just ate Laraba's food and slept like a log. Another woman claimed her sister miscarried after eating at the buka. But no one accused Laraba. Not outrightly. Her customers were too full. Too satisfied. Too scared, because something about that food, its heat, its smell, the way it left your fingers sticky even after washing, wasn't natural. And that week, the meat started tasting sweeter. Not sugary. Not like sugarcane or syrup. Sweet like blood in your mouth after biting your lip. Sweet like rust on the edge of a blade. No one dared say it out loud. But they tasted it. And Laraba, still silent, still precise, only watched them eat. One hand always on the ladle. The other on her scarf, adjusting it like a ritual. Alisa returned on Friday with a camera. That was the last day anyone saw Felix. Alisa had come prepared. He'd eaten before arriving, solid EBA and soup from his aunt's kitchen. He'd filled his flask with cold water, rinsed his mouth with salt. He told himself it was just food. Just spices, maybe some local herb with an aphrodisiac kick. He was a man of logic, after all. Taste buds, aroma receptors, neural patterns. The human brain could be tricked. That's all it was. He wasn't here to eat. Just observe. Then she looked at him. It was brief. A glance from across the pot. Her eyes didn't narrow, didn't smile, didn't do anything special. But in that single, unblinking moment, Alisa felt something slide beneath his ribs, a sensation like a whisper curling behind his ear. Before he could think, he was standing. One plate, he heard himself say. Laraba didn't nod. She just served. Stew, red and thick, sloshed gently over the rice. The ponmo looked glossy, tender. A slice of beef with the kind of softness only slow fire could grant. The smell hit first. Smoky. Tangy. And something else, earthy, deep. He sat, fork in hand. He hesitated. His heart thumped like he was about to cross a line. But the hunger was real. Sudden and coiling, as though his stomach had been waiting for this all his life. First bite, silence. The world muted, the rice didn't just taste good, it filled him. Not just the belly, but the spine, the tongue, the soft space behind his eyes. The spice curled perfectly, the oil slick on the meat felt like velvet. The ponmo cracked like joy in his jaw. He took another bite, faster now. The plate emptied too quickly. He scraped the rice, licked the spoon, stared at the steel tray as though it had betrayed him. His hands shook. A mild sweat bloomed under his shirt. He stood to go, and sat back down again. 5 minutes later, he ordered another plate. That night, Alisa didn't go home. He drove around in circles, windows down, tongue still working at the edges of his teeth as if chasing the last trace of stew. He parked near a petrol station and sat there for hours. Heart racing. Mouth dry. Mind spinning. By morning, he was back at the buka. Waiting, before it opened. He hadn't even realized he was already addicted. Alisa knew something was off. He wasn't a superstitious man, hadn't been since his boarding school days when boys whispered about mirror spirits and talking shadows. He believed in data, in pathology reports, in foodborne pathogens and trace contaminants. But there was no report that explained what had happened after he ate Laraba's food. Because something entered him. Not physically, it wasn't like swallowing a parasite or toxin. A shift in the edges of his thoughts. The memory of the food stayed too long, like a song stuck behind his ribs, like an itch under the skin of his mind. He had only meant to eat once. He had eaten 3 plates. And now, as he sat across the street from the buka, watching the early crowd shuffle in like loyal worshippers, he found himself gripping the steering wheel harder than necessary. His palms were slick. Okay, he whispered, voice low. Let's think. He had taken a sample, small portion wrapped and sealed in foil. It was in his freezer now, waiting to be analyzed. But even that had felt like betrayal. He couldn't explain it, just that while sealing it, he kept looking over his shoulder. Like the food knew. Like it was watching him. The cravings came in waves. Not hunger. Hunger was blunt, physical. This was yearning. Emotional. A sensation that whispered things like, what if you never taste it again? What if this is the best thing you'll ever have? He stepped out of the car. Today, he told himself, he wouldn't eat. He'd only watch. But when Laraba looked up, and their eyes met, he flinched. Not because of malice. There was nothing overt in her expression. But it was like she recognized him in a way he didn't recognize himself. He sat anyway. No plate today, he said, his voice firmer than he felt. She didn't nod. Didn't move. But someone behind him laughed. A man at the next table was licking his fingers, eyes rolling back slightly as he chewed. This woman, he said, half to himself, God used her hand to bless food. My wife tried to cook this stew, twice. I couldn't finish it. Alisa's stomach growled. Loud. Like a betrayal. He forced himself to stay seated, arms folded, heart racing as he inhaled the scent in the air. Pepper and onion. Smoked meat. Charred bone. Something iron-like beneath it all. He didn't eat. But he stayed. And Laraba, still ladling stew like time never moved, gave him a single look that said, soon. They came earlier now. Men in suits, men in dust-coated overalls. Women too, though fewer. Mostly the kind who didn't talk much, their wrappers tight around their waists, eyes shadowed with sleep and something deeper. Alisa started documenting it. He'd sit in his car across from the buka with a small black notebook, scribbling time and faces. Same people, day after day. Same seats. Some even brought their own spoons. Nobody lingered after eating. They just stood slowly, eyes a little glassy, and left like sleepwalkers. What haunted him wasn't the eating, it was the silence. No chatting, no complaints, just chewing and sighs and the clatter of cutlery against steel trays. And then, the stillness. Like everyone had agreed not to speak the name of what they'd just experienced. Alisa caught himself craving it again. The food, the feeling. The thing that bloomed in his chest after the first bite. That momentary peace. That full-body calm, like every unresolved ache, physical, emotional, even ancestral, had been fed. But he hadn't gone back. Still, it followed him. He noticed it everywhere. Co-workers with oil stains on their sleeves. A security guard humming an unfamiliar melody under his breath, a tune Alisa was sure he'd heard from the Buka's radio, the one Laraba always kept low. By the weekend, 3 other neighbors were walking down the road around noon, different directions, same destination. Someone had taken a tricycle from the next street, bypassing 3 known food spots just to get to Laraba. Even Pastor Namdi was spotted outside the Buka. Just once. Looking dazed. He claimed he'd only stopped to buy pure water, but his stained white sleeve told another story. Something was spreading. And Laraba? She remained the same. Her hair in a scarf, her wrists full of cheap bracelets, her gaze never lingering long. But Alisa began to notice something in the way she moved. She never asked for payment first. Never ran out of meat. Never raised her voice. And no one, not once, had ever complained about the price. By now, Alisa's notes had turned into questions. What's in the food? Why is the craving strongest after the first taste? Why does the air around her always feel slightly damp? He was slipping. He knew it. But curiosity, like hunger, could become a habit too. And soon, he'd go back. Alisa changed tactics. He stopped going near the Buka during the day. The smell alone was a trigger, curling around his ribs, whispering things he didn't like to hear. But he wasn't giving up. He was a pathologist, trained to chase evidence, even when it hid behind shadows and soft stew, so he began watching her after dark. Laraba closed at odd times. Some days, the fire was doused by 6. Other nights, the pot was still simmering at 8:30, and people lined up like parishioners in need of absolution. But always, just after the last plate was served, she cleaned in silence, packed her utensils into a blue plastic drum, and left. She walked. Never took a kiki or okada. Just drifted into the unlit backstreets, head bent, steps measured. Always carrying a small yellow jerrycan. That can haunted Alisa. He followed her twice from a distance, staying just beyond the flicker of streetlight. Both times, she cut through an alley near a rundown church, emerged by a cluster of unfinished houses, then disappeared behind a compound wall. No sign of a borehole. No well. No water tank. On the 3rd night, Alisa grew bolder. He circled the block early, stood near a vulcanizer's shop with his cap low. When she passed, he waited a few minutes, then followed. This time, he crept closer. That's when he saw it. A rusted gate, partially open. Beyond it, what looked like a compound that had once been a clinic. The signboard was broken, the lettering faded. He slipped in after she entered, sticking close to the wall. He heard a metallic creak of a tap. The slow gurgle of water. Not the clean kind. It didn't sound fresh. It had weight to it. He crouched behind a crumbling concrete barrier, heart thudding. He saw Laraba kneeling beside a tap sticking out from the base of a tiled structure. The tiles were chipped, but he recognized them. Hospital issue blue and white. A mortuary slab. She filled her jerrycan calmly. Like it was nothing. Like this was what water was for. Alisa didn't sleep that night. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw her crouched beside that stained slab, water trickling with the slow drag of a dying breath. He knew what that water was. His years in pathology had taught him the scent of chemicals, decay, formalin. That tap didn't run from any public line. He showered twice. Brushed his teeth till his gums bled. Still, something lingered at the back of his tongue. It wasn't food poisoning. By morning, he'd made a decision: someone had to know. He started with Ikenna, a lab technician he trusted. Straight talking, good instincts. Alisa waited until lunch break, then pulled him aside in the corner of the parking lot. "There's something wrong with that woman's food," Alisa said, lowering his voice. Ikenna blinked. "Which woman?" "The buka. The new one. Laraba." A slow grin crept over Ikenna's face. "Are you crazy? That woman is a blessing. Her stew alone can resurrect dead appetite." Alisa stiffened. "Exactly." Ikenna laughed. "You've gone too right. Don't be ashamed. Even my wife asks me why I don't eat at home again. I told her, that woman puts JuJu for rice. But I still go." He said it like a joke. But there was truth underneath. "She fetches water from a mortuary," Alisa said, pushing the words out like gravel. "I saw her. The tap is built into a slab. A proper tiled one." Ikenna's face didn't change the way Alisa expected. Instead, the man went quiet. Thoughtful. "Then, you sure?" "I'm a pathologist," Alisa snapped. "I know what I saw." Ikenna scratched his jaw, like he was trying to feel out a memory. "Well, it doesn't taste like it." That silenced Alisa. Later that afternoon, he approached another friend, Chinaza, a nurse who sometimes passed his lab to pick up test results. She had a sharp mind, quick judgment. He figured she'd be different. But when he brought it up, her face turned unreadable. "Why are you saying this?" she asked. "Because it's true. You've eaten her food." "Yes." "You liked it?" "Yes." She gave him a look that felt like pity. "Then maybe that's the problem, not her." He wanted to shout. Shake her. Instead, he watched her walk away, shoulders tense. Alisa didn't want to believe it. He ran every test. He scraped stew from the rim of a forgotten takeout plate in his fridge, sealed it in sterile bags, and analyzed it across 3 different labs. He tested for formalin, heavy metals, sedatives, known addictive compounds, hallucinogens. He ran spectrometry, chromatography, bacterial cultures. Everything came back clean. No toxins. No tampering. No explanation. Yet the hunger remained. He hadn't stepped into her buka in days, but every other meal now tasted dull, like chewing cloth. His hands shook in the mornings. His dreams stank of pepper soup and something older, muskier. He found himself walking near her street without realizing it. Just to inhale the air. It wasn't physical anymore. Something had tied itself to him. Slipped between his ribs. So Alisa broke one of his oldest rules. He called his mother. Mothers know when something's wrong. Before he could finish his second sentence, she interrupted. "Where did you go that your spirit is restless like this?" He hesitated. "There's a woman," he said slowly. "Oh. Not like that. She cooks food. People, men especially, flock to her buka. I've seen married men drive from Ogudu just to eat there. Some even bring coolers to take home. And you?" "I have eaten it too. You're not the first." Alisa sat up. "What?" "There was someone like her in Ilorin when I was your age," his mother whispered. "Same charm. Same food. They said it was pepper soup, but it was power. They shut her down after 3 men went mad from fighting over her food." His throat tightened. How did they stop her? They didn't. She left on her own. The kind of thing she was doing, it isn't easily stopped. "Then how?" There was a long pause. "You'll need someone stronger, the quiet ones. The watchers. The ones who work in shadows." "I don't know anyone like that." But I do, she said, almost sadly. I'll send you a number. The spiritualist lived in a one-room flat behind a mechanic shop. A small man with silver-rimmed eyes and skin the color of roasted groundnut. He didn't smile when Alisa entered. Just sniffed the air like a hound. You've tasted it, the man said. Alisa nodded. Good. That means she's marked you. What does that mean? It means we can find her, the man replied, voice low. Because now, part of her is inside you. The spiritualist's room smelled like old leaves and ash. He didn't ask for Alisa's name. He didn't touch him either. Just walked in slow, silent circles around him, muttering in a language that sounded more like humming than words. Then he stopped and placed 3 small bowls at Alisa's feet, one filled with salt, one with palm oil, one with dry pepper. Pick one, he said. Alisa's hand moved before he could think. The pepper. The man nodded. Your fire was taken. That's how she got in. He turned and reached for a bag of dried herbs, muttering again. Smoke soon filled the air, thick and cloying. Alisa's eyes stung, then watered, then cleared. And then he saw something he hadn't seen before. On his wrist, barely visible, was a dark thread. It looked like smoke woven into a loop. She marked you. That's how the hunger stays, the spiritualist said, voice grave. But this is not just about you. He stepped outside. Alisa followed him, dazed, blinking into sunlight. What happened next spread like ripples in water. The man moved through the market, quietly burning a mixture of dried leaves in a shallow clay bowl. He muttered no threats. Made no grand speeches. But one by one, people began to pause. To stare at their plates. At their hands. At themselves. Women looked at their husbands like strangers. Boys who had skipped school to carry her coolers sat on the ground, pale and trembling. A meat seller vomited. An old man dropped his spoon, looked around, and asked, how long have I been coming here? The spell was unraveling. Laraba's buka was still there, steam rising in the late morning sun. A queue already forming. But when the third person stepped out of line and walked away, the others followed like dominoes. By noon, the crowd had thinned to nothing. Alisa stood near the corner, watching the last pot simmer. Laraba was gone. No one saw her leave. No cab drove away. No Kiki idled. No footprints in the dust behind the shop. When they opened the door to the back room, where she'd sometimes disappear between servings, it was empty. Clean. Dry. No stove. No water source. No sign she'd ever been there at all. People muttered, some claimed she'd never existed, that maybe it was a group spell, a collective madness. Others swore she'd just been a woman with good cooking and bad luck. A few men sat with heads in their hands, grief tightening their faces, not because they missed her, but because they couldn't explain why they'd wanted her food more than anything in the world. By evening, the buka was bare. Only the cement floor remained, dotted with faint oil stains and scattered rice grains. The taste was gone. But no one forgot it. Not even Alisa. Especially not Alisa.